by State Affairs Committee. In the House of Representatives, House Bill 236 by Ways and Means Committee.
Senate Bill 1171, House Bill 61, Senate Bill 1161, House Bills 179, 301, 302, 305, 306, Senate Bill 1172, 1152, House Bill 156, Senate Bill 1143, and House Bill 236 will all be referred to the 13th order of business, third reading calendar.
Mr. President,
Senator Anthem.
I ask the Senate go at ease.
The Senate will go at ease.
Senators, majority, let's go up to the caucus.
Rest of us will wait.
Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is sponsored by Idaho Cable Broadband Association, Association of Idaho Cities, Boise State School of Public Service, the James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research, and the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
The Senate will be in order. Prior to going at ease, the Senate was in the 13th order of business. 12th?
There is no further business in the 12th order, Mr. President.
Okay, so then the Senate will advance to the 13th order of business, third reading of bills. Senate's in the 13th order, and we'll have under consideration for the final time, Senate Bill 1154. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the Senate Bill 1154 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to temporary care assistance programs to revise provisions regarding criminal history and background checks for
Mr.
potentially...
President.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of Senate Bill 1154 be dispensed with, and the journal showed it has been read the third time at length, section by section. It is placed before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, then it is so ordered. Senator Lee, you recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good senators. And I'm happy to have some guests from New Plymouth here today. This is a follow-up piece of legislation to add a correction from a bill that was passed last year. Last year, we approved temporary caregivers in statute to allow families and individuals in the community to help support children on a temporary basis. So instead of a single parent, for example, has surgery and has no one to watch their children for 3 weeks, sometimes those children would go into foster care. But now we have a system set up where families within your church or your community or neighbors can really help scaffold and support these kids on a temporary basis. And so one of the things that we had added in there was a background check for these individuals. And the FBI came back and said we couldn't use our database for these background checks unless we had it in statute. And so we're adding that. In addition, last year's language said that the department may charge a fee for a background check, and we've changed that to say that the department will cover those costs. And I think that's an additional benefit for these families who are stepping up with no compensation to help these children and these families within their own community. And with that, Mr. President, debate is open.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Lee, will you stand and close the debate, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, debate is closed.
Debate being closed, the question before the Senate is, shall Senate Bill 1154 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams. Anthem. Berndt. Bierke. Burtonshaw. Carlson. Cook. Den Hartog.
Aye.
Foreman. Grove.
Aye.
Guthrie. Harris. Hart. Hartgen. Herndon. Just.
Aye.
Lakey, Lee, Lenny, Lent, Nichols, Okonowitz, Robbie, Ricks, Ruchti, Schroeder, Semmelroth, Taylor,
Aye.
Taves, Trakel, Van Orden, Ward King, Winder, Wintrow, Seiderveld, Hart, Herndon, Lenny, Nichols,
Mr. President,
Senator Carlson.
may I change my vote to a yes?
Yes, Senator Carlson's no vote will be changed to yes. Roll call shows 35 in favor with none against and none absent. The majority having voted in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1154 has passed the Senate. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, then the title is approved, and Senate Bill 1154 will be transmitted to the House.
Mr. President.
Senator Anthem.
Mr. President, is Senate Bill 1161 in this order of business?
Senate Bill 1161 is in my hand, and yes, it is.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that all rules interfering with the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1161 be dispensed with.
Second. You've heard the motion. It is a non-debatable motion. It requires 2/3 of the body or 24 votes for passage. The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams, Anthem, Berndt, Bierke, Burtonshaw, Carlson, Cook, Den Hartog,
Aye.
Foreman, Grow,
Aye.
Guthrie, Harris, Hart, Hartgen, Herndon, Just,
Nay.
Lakey, Lee, Lenny, Lent, Nichols, Okonowitz, Robbie, Ricks, Ruchti, Schroeder, Semmelroth, Taylor,
Nay.
Taves, Trakel, Van Orden, Ward King, Winder, Wintrow, Seiderveld,
The roll call shows 26 in favor with 9 opposed, more than 2/3 having voted in the affirmative. The Senate will now have before it Senate Bill 1161. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the Senate, Senate Bill 1161 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to the Empowering Parents Grant Program to define terms and to revise definitions.
Mr. President.
Senator Den Hartog.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of Senate Bill 1161 be dispensed with, and the journal show it's been read the third time at length, section by section, and is properly before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, Senator Den Hartog, you're recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators. Senate Bill 1161 really is the continuation of a conversation that we have been having on this floor and around this building about another way, or perhaps a different way, that we can help kids in Idaho. So I hope you will be as excited as I am to consider this piece of legislation today. So what the bill is it proposes an expansion of our existing Empowering Parents microgrant program. This was a program that was first put into place by executive order in 2020 by the gentleman on the second floor, known as Strong Families, Strong Students. We made an attempt to codify that piece of legislation in the 21 session. We were unsuccessful, and we came back last year and proposed the microgrant program. So that program, as it exists in code today, is for all families. All students can apply for these funds. It's $1,000 per student with a max of $3,000 per family. And there's a mix of educational uses that those funds can be used for, from tutoring to therapy services to curriculum or computers and things like that. Currently, that program is operated by the State Board of Education. This piece of legislation proposes to move the operation of that program from the State Board to the department. This has been a conversation that we've had with both the board and the department. The board is happy to release that, and the department is happy to receive it. So what the bill does is it is a modest proposal that builds on this successful program. We've heard in prior debates concerns around, do we know what something's going to cost? Do we know, can we really predict with fidelity what this is actually going to cost the taxpayers in the state of Idaho? And you'll notice on the statement of purpose and the fiscal note, there is a clear outline of what the cost will be for what I'm about to describe to you. So for the existing microgrant program, it adds one additional eligible education expense, and that is transportation for an eligible student to and from an eligible education entity where they would be receiving services or accessing what they need. The second part of the bill is it adds a pilot program, and this is a true 5-year pilot program. The way the legislation is written, as what I'm about to describe to you, it will sunset in 5 years. We don't know who's going to be here 5 years from now, and if no affirmative action is collectively taken by the legislature, this second portion that I'm about to describe to you will truly sunset. And I think that's important. That was one of the considerations we heard when we were debating something like a universal education savings account previously on this floor. And I and many others who've been working on this took that feedback and incorporated that into this piece of legislation. So the pilot program would add a tuition grant to the Empowering Parents Grant Program. That tuition grant would be for up to 2,000 students per year of the 5-year pilot program, and the amount would be $6,000 per student. So that would be $12 million per year for the 5 years of the pilot program. As you'll see in the fiscal note, we don't need that $12 million until fiscal 25, and I'll get into the reasons why in just a moment. So no additional appropriation is needed this session if this legislation were to pass. So the application, let me talk a little bit about what the tuition grants can be used for. The tuition grants can be used for traditional tuition at a non-public school, and they can also be used for the hiring of a certified teacher for a micro school or a learning pod. That is something that we saw families, an option that we saw families use and implement throughout the pandemic, and we had several families that really experienced some really positive outcomes for their kids by providing an educational opportunity that they hadn't utilized before. So what is a non-public school or a certified teacher running a micro school? What do they have to teach? If you look on page 1 of the bill, there is a definition of academic instruction. So academic instruction, as defined in the legislation, is instruction in English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies sufficient to satisfy Idaho's constitutional and statutory compulsory education requirements. So we're not talking about a fly-by-night school. The example I've used before is we had a school start up in my area that was teaching sword making and archery and all kinds of creative outdoor things, but they weren't teaching the core subjects. So a school like that would not be eligible for parents to use these funds for their children. So the way that it would work is that the application period for these tuition grants would open January 1 to April 1, and all families could apply. After that April 1 closing date, the State Department then would look at all the applications that they would receive, and they would prioritize who would receive those funds based on the income levels of the families. There's no specific income limit on that but the families with the lowest income would receive the highest priority as the department would determine who would receive these tuition grants. The tuition grants would operate under the same platform that the microgrant program operates under. It's a digital platform, so we're not sending out checks to parents and families. We're not depositing it in their personal accounts. This all happens on a digital platform, so there's fiscal accountability and transparency in that. Those payments would be made on a quarterly basis, so if a parent and their student decided they were going to make a change partway through the year, those payments would stop. It's required in the legislation that they would have to notify the department if they went to a non-public school part of the year and they said, oh, this really isn't working, we're going to go back and do something different, then they would have to notify the department and the payments would stop. So the parent advisory panel was put into place with a passage of last year's legislation. This modifies the responsibility of the parent panel in some important ways. It gives them a little bit more of a role. So when we look at what type of non-public school would be eligible, the parent panel is the one who's going to do the initial vetting to make sure that an institution that wants to receive, provide services to students who have these funds, that they're teaching those core subjects. And so the parent panel is kind of that first line of saying, you don't even get to be on the platform if you don't teach all the things that we're asking you to teach. And then there is an appeal process that can go back to the department. The final iteration of that is the department is the final say on that. And then let's talk a little bit more about accountability. We've talked about in the current microgrant program, there's an annual reporting process that will continue, and it would take in the tuition grant program. There's also a report back function at the end of the 5 years, so whoever might be here 5 years from now will have the opportunity to review that. That report is required to have information about the sustainability, the accountability, and the student outcomes for the participants of that program. And that is required. Additionally, we had some comments as we were going through the process and drafting the legislation, an interest in making sure this information was available on Transparent Idaho. So we've added some language related to the controller's office and the ability to see where these funds are used, how they're being used, and what they're being used for. There is a caveat to that. We want to make sure that no personally identifiable information would go out on the controller's office, so there would be some shielding of information there and maybe some collapsing just to see kind of the broad buckets and regionally where it's spent. I think I'll leave it at that and open debate.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Whitrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from 22 yield to an inquiry?
Senator Denton-Hartog, will you yield to a question?
Senator yields.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator from 22, I apologize. I have a couple of questions, but this just kind of came up and I wasn't ready. But on the section where it says monies could be used to help with transportation to and from a school, I noticed that it could be used for transportation funding in a private vehicle. So I'm wondering, how does one track that mileage, and how do we know they're actually going to school and not somewhere else?
Senator Denton-Hartog.
Mr. President and Senator from 19, transportation, that would be, it's on a reimbursement basis, so they wouldn't receive the funds up front. So the department they have the authority and purview to set what they would be looking for from that student and their family to make sure. And that's only for the microgrant program, and there is a provision that you can't qualify for both the microgrant and the tuition grant. So it would only be for the recipients of the microgrant. The parents would have to demonstrate that obviously their student would be eligible and that it was to an eligible education service.
Mr. President, for another question, if the senator would yield.
Senator yields.
Yield. Senator Denton-Hartog.
Yes, I yield.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much for your patience, Senator from 22. So it sounds like what you're saying is that and I apologize if I don't know this, but the agency supervising all this, it might be the state board, I can't remember, but they will create rules and processes based on this legislation to monitor that.
Mr. President, Senator from 19, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. For one more inquiry, if the senator from 22 would yield.
Another question.
Senator yields.
The senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator from 22. Again, I appreciate it. On page 2, where line 48 has the definition for tuition grant, means an award of $6,000, which must be used for academic instruction provided by a non-public school. So my question is, this $6,000 may not go toward a public school, but only a private school.
Mr. President, Senator from 19, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator from 22.
Mr. President, would the senator from District 22 yield to
Mr.
a
President, I
question?
ask the Senate go to ease.
Senate go to ease. So will be in order. Part of going at ease, we're in the 13th order of business. We were debating Senate Bill 1161. I'd recognize Senator Rutke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if the senator from District 22, I'd ask if she'd yield to a question.
Do you still posing that question? Senator, do you yield?
I will yield.
The senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Senator from District 22. We did have this discussion, but I thought it was a helpful one, good information. It has to do with the same paragraph we've been discussing, which is on page 2, and it's subparagraph F that talks about transportation of an eligible student to and from a facility where the educational program is taking place. My kids went to a charter school, public school, and so as with many charter schools, they don't have busing, and so if you want your child to go there, you pay for transportation to and from, and whatever activities. You don't have buses available. Can you walk me through what we're doing here and why we chose to do it this way?
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator from 29. Happy to do that. So again, the transportation-related expenses only relate to the recipients of the micro grant, which is the $1,000 per student, the max of $3,000 per family. Any student in the state of Idaho is eligible to apply for those funds. That has not changed. That's how it exists today. So in the circumstance or the example you mentioned, you have a family who's interested in sending their children to a public charter school. If they had to provide their own transportation, they could utilize these funds if they met the other requirements for those transportation-related expenses. And then I would just note, under the current program, we've had the vast majority of recipients of the microgrant program are students in traditional public schools, over 36,000. And then the next set is, the next highest number is 5,500 are public charter school students.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, and Senator from 22. I appreciate that information.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Ward Ingle King.
to debate against the bill,
The floor.
and I hope the Senate will indulge me, because this is one of the things that I am passionate about, is public education. And I want to point out three things that I think we all need to think about. I assume most people have made their minds up, but I just want to, I guess it will help me feel like I did everything I could to stop this bill from going forward. The first thing is, last year, Senate Bill 1255 came to our committee in Senate Ed, and we were told over and over again, no, this is not going to be used for vouchers or private tuition. This absolutely will not. This is to help students that have a learning lag because of the pandemic, or poorer families that can't afford the devices or the broadband that they need to use for public education to access all the online, or maybe would even be used for speech therapy or music lessons. And we asked the sponsor of that bill if can we be assured that this is not an inroad to private tuition? And we were told more than once that no, it isn't. The Empowering Parents grants are to be used for needs other than private tuition. So this bothers me a lot, that we funded it, we passed it forward thinking this is good for kids, and now we see that the purpose has changed and will include private tuition. The second thing says, well, we've got accountability here because we have a parental advisory council that's going to be in place, and 2 members, I believe, are appointed by the pro tem, 2 from the speaker, and 3 members from the governor's office. But then it further states that these people have to be parents who are participating in this, that have received a grant, who have received the private tuition grant, or maybe it's a different grant for the micro schools. To me, that's not an oversight committee. That's like the fox guarding the hen house. The third thing I want to talk about is we all took an oath to uphold the Idaho Constitution in January. And Article 9, Section 5 is very clear. And Mr. President, could I read from the Constitution, please?
Yeah, I think you're always allowed to read from the Constitution.
Just want to be careful here.
Somebody want to get that? Senator Ward Engelking, you're recognized to continue your debate and read from the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Article 9, Section 5 says, neither the legislature nor any county, city, town, township, school district, or other public corporation shall ever make any appropriation or pay from any public fund or monies whatsoever, anything in aid of any church or sectarian or religious society or any sectarian or religious purpose, or to help support or sustain any school, academy, seminary, college, university, or other literary or scientific institution controlled by any church. And it goes on. But why that's important in this bill is some people have said, well, the Blaine Amendment's dead. It doesn't apply anymore. And so that section of the Constitution doesn't apply because the Supreme Court has ruled. And if I may, I'd like to read from a statement of Jim Jones, former Idaho Supreme Court Justice. And it's a letter that was sent to the Idaho legislature. May I read?
Having cited the source, the senator may read.
It says, some people who simply don't know what they are talking about falsely claim that the Blaine Amendment is a dead letter or that it has been overruled by the United States Supreme Court. They argue that the amendment should be removed from the Idaho Constitution because it is just meaningless verbiage. That is patently false. The Supreme Court has decided 2 cases dealing with the Blaine Amendment, and neither has overruled it. In the latest case, Carson versus Macon, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, a state need not subsidize private education, but once a state decides to do so, it cannot disqualify some private schools solely because they are religious. The words may seem familiar because Roberts previously stated them to be the law of the land in the case from Montana in 2020. So our Blaine Amendment is still intact, as long as we don't open the door to private tuition. And that matters to me. I also want to point out that we have underfunded public education here in Idaho. And I'm happy to say that I think we're on a good track right now. We're making some headway. But we currently had 40 school districts yesterday try to pass a bond or a levy. Many of them failed. And they needed that money to build a new school or to provide enough funding that they could keep their schools open 5 days. We have 45 school districts in this state on a 4-day week. And they didn't go to a 4-day week because they thought that was great for kids. They went to a 4-day week because they couldn't afford 5 days. And some of them are making it work. I'll give them that. I've been impressed. They're doing all their professional development on the 5th day. They are doing their sports activities on the 1st day, on the 5th day, when kids aren't there, so kids don't miss any. And they're doing field trips on that day. So they're making it work. But I'm concerned that this money is coming right out of public education. This $30 million that is in the Empowering Parent Grant is from the $330 million that was passed in September in our extraordinary session, House Bill 1, that was to be used for public education. It was not to be siphoned off for private schools. That's how we sold it to the public. That's how it was put on the ballot. So, and I guess I'll just point out, We have almost $1 billion in backlog and deferred maintenance from our public traditional schools facilities. If we want to do something really bold, let's take $50 million and put it in a revolving fund account for traditional public schools to use to interest-free to fix their schools. This is, we aren't adequately funding the schools that we currently have in place, public charter and public traditional. We should not be siphoning off money for private/religious schools at this point in time. And I'm happy to go on, but you're probably tired of hearing me, so I will sit down, but I am pleading you to vote no.
Mr. President,
Senator Lenny.
to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would say that, you know, a newspaper article from Jim Jones doesn't overrule our Supreme Court, and that regarding the Blaine Amendment, it went to the same grave as Roe versus Wade, based on recent Supreme Court decisions. Those Supreme Court decisions that we hear mentioned, Espinoza versus Montana, the Montana Department of Revenue in 2020, and Carson versus Macon in 2022, and our Supreme Court was so clear on this, which just confirms that the Blaine Amendment, they said, is a violation of the First Amendment, specifically the free exercise clause. I think it's worth pointing out as well that former Attorney General Wasden agreed with this assessment last year when there was a similar school choice bill brought up. He said that using dollars in this way, I believe he said it was likely constitutional in his letter that he sent to the legislature. And our current Attorney General has also concurred with the Supreme Court, saying that the Blaine Amendment cannot be used to discriminate against sectarian organizations. So I think that's important to point out. And Mr. President, I'd like to read from a small quote from Justice Alito in the concurring opinion in the Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue decision, if that's okay.
Having cited the source, Senator Lenny, you may read.
Thank you. And this, again, this is Justice Samuel Alito in one of these Supreme Court cases. I think this kind of puts the nail in the coffin. He said, named after House Speaker James Blaine, the congressman who introduced it in 1875, the amendment was prompted by prejudice against immigrants, particularly Catholic immigrants. In effect, the amendment would have barred any aid to Catholic and other sectarian schools. As noted in a publication from the United States Commission on Civil Rights, a prominent supporter of this ban was the Ku Klux Klan. The resulting wave of state laws withholding public aid from sectarian schools cannot be understood outside this context. So again, a newspaper article from Jim Jones I don't think overrides the Supreme Court on this, our former Attorney General or our current Attorney General, and I'll definitely be supporting this bill because I think it is in fact constitutional.
Mr. President,
Senator Just.
I'd like to remind the body about another Idaho Supreme Court ruling not so long ago, and that was, I won't quote from it, I'll just paraphrase, that it's the duty of the legislature to provide a free public education for students in Idaho. And I think we're failing to do that. They said, the Supreme Court, Idaho Supreme Court said that we were failing to do that. This doesn't help that. This removes funding from public education with little or no accountability. So I think we're inviting a lawsuit on this, and for that reason alone, I would certainly vote against it.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Robbie.
to debate against the bill.
You have the floor.
So, Senators, I do agree with Senator to my right that there are issues with the legality of this bill, but I'm also concerned about process, I'm also concerned about budget and accountability. One, regarding process, it's difficult when a bill is, I know it's allowed in process-wise, but it's difficult when things are expedited and we don't have an opportunity to discuss amongst each other or prepare for debate or discussion. So I also feel like this is something that we have already talked about and an issue that has been brought up in multiple bills, multiple committees on both sides of the building. And I think it's already an issue that we have decided with another bill. And I just don't understand why this keeps coming up. And it is, to be frank, Senators, quite frustrating process-wise. Regarding the fiscal conservatism of this bill, that I'm a product of Idaho's public schools. I went to Middleton from kindergarten through graduation. My mom was a public school teacher for 30 years. I deeply understand how our public schools are already very underfunded in many ways, and we are simply creating a new program that will inevitably cost our state hundreds of millions of dollars over time. That, to me, is perplexing. We as a state have never had a program like this in our entire history for many good reasons. And I don't understand what has changed. I'm concerned that the one thing that has changed is that there's a lot of money available for public schools this year. And I'm concerned that there are outside and special interests that may be influencing our decision-making on this topic for the first time, because nothing else, Senators, has changed. Our public schools are still operating, they're still educating students, and they're doing as best they can with the limited resources that we are already providing them. So I just don't think this is a good idea. I don't think it's something that we can afford, while also trying to backfill our struggling public schools. I'm also concerned about accountability. We've talked about this, again, we've already talked about this, but these private schools have no accountability standards as public schools have. There's a long list of things that public schools must do, and they are held accountable to our state departments, to our legislature, to our governor. Private schools are not. There is no accountability to this bill. They don't have to comply with any educational standards. They don't have to report anything back to us, and yet we're giving them all this money from private taxpayers. That just doesn't reconcile for me. That doesn't make sense to me. There's also very limited accountability for parents. The only requirement that parents have in using this money, if they use it and then say their kid is pulled out of the private school, there's something on page 4, lines 18 to 20, that they have to inform the department when tuition is no longer needed, but there's no consequence. What if they don't do that? There's a fraud department, or fraud, there's going to be some fraud detection going on, not defined what that looks like or who would be held accountable to that fraud. It's not defined anywhere in this bill. So we are essentially throwing money at people without holding them accountable to following through with what they say they're going to use the money for. So again, very concerned about process, very concerned about how we're going to afford this, not only in the short term, but the long term. I'm concerned about the state of our public schools, where this money is coming from, and then the fact that we're giving this money to these private agencies that are not held accountable to anyone. Please, Senators, again, we've talked about this before, as many of you did before, please vote no. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Hartgen.
To debate the bill.
Or.
You know, I really like the empowering program that we created last year, and I know people that have used it. It fills the needs of the small needs of these people. But make no mistake, this is an ESA. And whether you do believe the remarks made by Justice Jones or not, I happen to, and I've talked to him personally, as I have other legal people. And it is still against our Constitution. And for all the reasons that have already been stressed here, that there is no accountability, I will just tell you that this week my district did pass their levy, and my district has many, many public believers in public school. And all of those people, many, many of them have contacted me and said, please vote no on Senate Bill 1161, and that's what I will do. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Adams.
Yes, would the senator from District 22 yield to a question?
Senator Den Hartog, will you yield to a question?
Senator yields.
The senator yields.
Thank you, good senator. So on line 34 of page 4 of Senate Bill 1161, it says that the department will assess accountability of parents of participants. Can you explain what that means exactly?
Senator Den Hartog.
Mr. President, Senator from what district?
12.
12. Senator from 12. So this is in this section, excuse me, this is in this section on the report back function on the tuition grant process. And the full line says accountability of parents of participants awarded tuition grants, participants awarded tuition grants in non-public schools. There is indeed a provision for the, if there is fraud, the department has the ability to investigate that and to turn that over to the Attorney General. So the accountability there in that report could be a multitude of things. It could be the department reporting back to say, were there cases of fraud that we solved, and report that back at the end of the 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. President, to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, good senators, I'm glad that the empowering parents portion of this bill is back, because I too really thought that filled a need. I supported it in the other side of this building when it was federal funds one time. Now this has come from the general fund, so sounds like we're making a program permanent. The good senator from 18 said she was passionate about public schools. Well, I'm passionate about private school education. So we got all the spectrums here. But I'm not thrilled about this legislation. And there are a couple key words that I want us to really take notice of. The first one is pilot program. When I hear pilot program, I hear this is the beginning of something bigger. And that causes me a lot of angst. This legislation, as far as the tuition portion, is only for 2,000 students. If that's not picking winners and losers, I don't know what is. So I have some serious reservations in that area as well. You know, it really just feels like we're taking this and turning it into a permanent program that the state is going to fund. There's another part that really concerned me. It establishes a hotline for reporting. There's only 2,000 kids. So that's definitely some government involvement in the private sector of education if I've ever seen it. But I think we have to talk about the real elephant in the room, which has been brought up to some extent, and that is whether or not we can send or should send money straight from the state to private institutions, specifically through the Department of Education, and if we're going to include that there. So I tend to agree with the senator from 13 on this issue. I think we do have the ability to send funds from the state to private and religious institutions. But the bigger question is, should we do that? The separation between the state, and I'm not talking about separation of church and state, I'm talking about the institutions. The institutions of the state and the institutions of private, unchained by the state education, which we are so proud of in this state. Every time the state sends money to something, eventually, let me just put it like this. If the state pays for the tuition, and let's say this is a pilot program and it grows and it becomes very popular and there's a lot of people that use it. If the state is paying for 40% of the tuition at a private school, what is the percentage before that becomes a quasi-public private school? Because the chains do come. And they might not come in a year, they might not come in 5 years, but in 20 years, odds are none of us are going to be in this building. And it is a responsibility of the state to be accountable for the tax dollars, regardless of where they're coming out of. I do appreciate, it's very similar to 1038, I appreciate the intent. But again, I feel this legislation falls short, and it really is still so narrowly tailored. That was one of the aspects of the previous piece of legislation that I don't think I'm allowed to mention, that I really appreciated, was it was for everybody. And this is not. This picks 2,000 winners, and all the other ones are losers. So with that, Mr. President, I will be voting against this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Taylor, you have the floor to debate.
Thank you. I agree with the good senator from District 25. I have not received one single positive email about this particular bill. And when I was elected, I gave my word to my constituents. And my word is the only currency that I have that is worth anything. And I will be voting no against this. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Land.
Thank you, Mr. President, to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
I would just add to that, my email and information I've received has been very much against this particular bill. But I will say that I think the direction we're going here is where we're going to end up at some point. I think being more flexible in how we spend our education dollars, that's coming. What I'm concerned about is how quickly this has evolved this session, and here at the end we're, rushing to get something through. I read a book recently that talked a lot about where we are as a culture and a society. One of the things it focused on is we're moving from process to performance. So with that in mind, and I sure appreciated the sponsor spending some time with me this week, talking about some of these issues and working with me. She was great. But where I'm at here is one of the criticisms we have about public schools is they're not performing. I think this is an opportunity, if we're going to take this step, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime step for even more than that in education in Idaho, we're changing direction. This is a significant event that we're about to do. If it's that important, we do have an advisory, or I think it's called the advisory panel, but they changed it to parent panel, because my comment was they need to do more than advise. They need to have some responsibility, some teeth in here. And my question was, when it goes south, because even in the charter system, with all the accountability we have there, we still have schools that fail. And my concern is we start doing this and we have some significant failures, which we will. How do we go out and stop that? How do we turn that off? without having the backlash that it's gone completely in the ditch and we need to stop all of this, because that could happen as well too. So back to the performance issue. I think we have an opportunity with this parent panel, which is being set up currently by the governor. They're interviewing people, taking applications. I think this summer we have an opportunity for them to do what the panel was supposed to do, which was help outline and define the program. They get together with our good superintendent of instruction, Debbie Critchfield. They add to this. They put meat on the bones. They work with our sponsors. And then this fall, if they come back with, I think, a better product. If this is a good idea today, it'll be a good idea and maybe even better 10 months from now. But it will have that parent input that it doesn't necessarily have at this point. So I come back to this question, and this is kind of where I'll end my debate. If we're spending public dollars, is this in fact a public school? And what does that mean? And if we're willing to open the door and make these changes in education, let's do it right. Let's take the time to build in the performance elements that will help us be successful as we move forward. Thank you.
Further debate?
Yes, Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Hernan, you have the floor to debate.
I've heard several senators talk about accountability, and I think it's important to understand, I think it's important for Idahoans to understand that in our public education system, we don't have actual accountability for results built into the system. So when we appropriate money to the public education system, what we don't say is that you have to achieve an 80% reading proficiency at 8th grade in order to keep receiving the money. So right now, we have a reading efficiency of 32%. And if that were my homeschool result for my children, I would feel like a complete failure, and I would want to hold myself accountable. But we don't have real accountability. All we have is no different than what this program has. Does the money leave the Treasury, and does it arrive at its intended destination? That's the only accountability we have built into our system. I've also heard the concern that this is a pilot program. The word pilot is not in the text of the bill. I've heard concern that if this is a good program, it'll be better in 10 months. This doesn't go into effect until fiscal year 2025. So it is in the future. I've heard concern that this could grow. It can't grow unless we revisit it legislatively, because it's only for 2,000 students, and that is in the text of the bill. So it doesn't grow unless we know it is performing. What is the goal? The goal of the program, and it has income limits, is the reason that we desire school choice is because our constitutional mandate is to provide education for all of the people of Idaho that choose to participate. And there are some participating in our public school system right now that are not achieving the desired results. We know that because we test them and we know they're not able to achieve the results. And so this offers another option for those people who don't have other options because their family can't afford other options. So this is a program that provides opportunity for those who do not have another opportunity right now and who are not able to perform in our current limited system. The system is limited because it's one size fits all. We do have charter schools. That's another option. We're going to open enrollment, hopefully. That's another option. But this is in the vein and the desire to improve student performance in the state of Idaho, and for that reason, I stand in support of the bill.
For the debate,
Mr. President.
Senator Schroeder.
To debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hear this charge leveled frequently, and I'm baffled by it. The charge that we don't have accountability at our public schools. There are 115 or so public schools, I can't remember how many. Each of those have an elected school board, elected by voters. Some of them by very thin margins, some by vote totals of 16 or 18 votes. Those school boards are the ones that are accountable for the results of those schools. They're accountable to the extent that they have to publish a budget, that they have to hold a budget hearing, that every record and every ounce and every bit of money spent by those school districts is subject to public records requests. They're one of the most accountable entities in the state of Idaho. They're accountable in terms of the qualifications of the people they can hire, dictated by this body. They're 100% accountable. What this bill proposes is spending money on schools to which there is no accountability. I struggle with that. I struggle with the amount of money that is going to be spent on schools that have no such accountability, including criminal accountability. Let me just throw that one on there. I'll be voting against the bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Burtonshaw.
I don't think you can impugn anybody's honor here, because I have a ton of respect for those that have been involved with this bill, and I think they're trying to solve a problem that they perceive is important, and I do too. But for me, the problem comes with commingling state funds in private schools. And that's where the issue is for me, because once we start down this road, we can't turn back. And we have the responsibility to fund all private or parochial schools that ask for that opportunity. And for me, that's where the issue is. It's not with the bill makers, it's not with the intent, because I think the intent is honorable, but that's where the constitutional issue is for me. And respectfully, I'll be voting no.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Semmelroth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, my microphone fell down the desk. To debate the bill.
Have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I am a certified special education teacher. I have a doctorate that specializes in special education. And anytime there is legislation that excludes students with disabilities, I will be speaking up. This bill includes language on page 4, lines 23 through 28, that will provide explanations to parents in accordance with IDEA about their rights regarding this legislation. I can tell you what their rights are. They're none. They don't have any rights when it comes to enrolling children with disabilities in private schools. In fact, parents have no rights, regardless of whether their children have disabilities or not, because they're private by definition. They can choose to enroll or unenroll a child for any reason, whether they have disabilities, whether they have limited English proficiency, whether they have dyslexia, or for any other reason that might not affect instruction. When you think about the use of public tax dollars for private institutions who are able to exclude student populations for any reason, as the senator from 33 said, this is something within our lifetime. This is a historical moment. This has never happened in this legislature, that we're talking about allowing public tax dollars to be used without accountability for private schools, private school tuition or vouchers. Which private schools specialize in serving students with disabilities in Idaho? There are none. Which private school serves all children under the 14 disability categories we have in the state of Idaho? There are none. Which private schools serve students with disabilities in rural areas? There are none. Which public schools are required to serve students with disabilities? All of them. Every public school is required to follow the federal requirements of IDEA. Private schools exist because public schools have to serve all students. IDEA is a powerful legal requirement that all states and schools have to follow who receive the federal funding. One of the federal requirements is called child find. This requires the state to find any child with disabilities from birth to age 21, to locate, evaluate, and serve those children, including children who are homeless, who are wards of the state, and children attending private schools, because private schools don't have to serve them. If your inbox looks anything like mine, you have an overwhelming amount of Idahoans asking you to vote against 1161. Mr. President,
Senator.
may I please read from an email I received on March 15th from Linda Patchen, the chairman of Homeschool Idaho?
Having identified the source, the senator may read from that source.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, in this email from Ms. Patchen, she writes, "We have friends in Arizona from the state homeschool organization there, which is similar to Homeschool Idaho." Further down in the email, she writes, "Many parents in Arizona with special needs students gave ESA a try, but quickly discovered that it was not all that it was sold to be. For instance, once enrolled, you are expected to provide all of your child's education through the ESA source. This means that if a child has an IEP that requires therapies through the school that are no longer eligible to receive them through the school. Hence, the ESA amount received was not enough to cover all of their special needs therapies. Many found themselves with higher education bills after enrolling in the ESA. And then she finishes, "In my opinion, the students who have the most to lose with ESAs are special needs students." For the first time in the history of this legislature, we would be allowing private school tuition, private school vouchers, subsidies, ESAs, however you want to say it. Public tax dollars would be used to fund private school tuition. Join me and all of the other Idahoans who are asking us to vote no on this bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Taves, you have the floor to debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, there is no better accountability than the parents' choice of what is best for their children. We have a lot of talk about accountability and how to measure it and how to figure out whether or not these funds would be used in the best way possible for educating children. And thinking about my children, I know what they need. I know what the best educational resources for them are. And I can't think of anybody else who should make that decision. So I think that we have the accountability component covered as long as you believe that parents can be trusted to make those decisions. As far as the special needs concepts that were just presented, I would just point out that this is an opt-in system. Nobody's forcing anyone to take the funds. If the parents believe that their children would be better served through this program, then they're free to use the program. If they believe that they're not, then they can leave their children in the public school system. There's no forcing anyone to do anything. So for these reasons, I strongly support this bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Carlson.
To debate the bill.
The floor.
I'm in support of this legislation. One thing at one point I don't think has been made yet is that all students in Idaho are not getting funded for their education currently. We have some students who are homeschooled and some who are in private school, and Idaho is not paying for the individuals that are not in public school. So I believe the Constitution asks us to educate all kids. So I will be voting for this bill because it helps those students who don't have parents who have money for private school and whose parents have not decided to homeschool them at this point. They have no money, and some of them have special education kids who are not being served by our public education system. So I will be voting yes.
Mr. President,
Senator Schroeder, for what purpose do you rise?
to debate the bill a second time.
Does anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? Senator Schroeder, you're recognized to debate for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I feel like I owe the bill's sponsor a little better debate than what I gave. I bristle and I resent this false narrative that has been portrayed about our system of public schools that's failing. A great deal of that responsibility rests with us. It also rests with the system we've created and with the elected school boards we have. The sponsor of this bill has been nothing but gracious, generous with her time, and I appreciate, and I'd like to echo the sentiments of the senators from 33 and 31 of the work that she put into this bill. And I think it is a step in the right direction. I appreciate the empowering parents portion and the micro grants, but I can't support the amount that's being spent and just given to public or private schools that doesn't have the degree of accountability that we have in our government run system. And so with that, I appreciate the senator from 22's efforts, but I am reluctantly voting against the bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Lenny, for what purpose do you rise?
like the good senator from 8 to debate the bill a second time.
Does anyone wish to debate it for the first time? Senator Lenny, you're recognized to debate for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought it would be a good reminder to people on the floor here that this concept of what this bill would do if it passes is it would allow money to follow the student to the parents and students, whatever the parent's choice is, the education service provider of their choice. And that language is in, for those of us in the majority party, that language is in our state platform about money following the student. And I think, we hear a lot about, and we talk about taxpayer money as if it belongs to a particular institution, as if taxpayer money belongs to public school. And we should fund public schools, and we do fund public schools. But like I said in a previous debate on an earlier bill, taxpayer money does not belong to any particular institution. Taxpayer money, with regard to education, should be used to educate students. It should follow the students. It should educate students. It does not belong by default to a particular institution. So I like this bill because it provides another path for parents who might be looking for a different fit. And as the senator from 4 said, with regards to special needs education, this is an opt-in program, and public schools have some great programs for special needs students. So, if the parent wants to leave, if a parent of a special needs student wants to leave their child in the public school, they can do that. No one's pulling them out and forcing them to use this program. So, again, still in support of the bill.
Senator Adams, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, to debate the bill for a second time.
Wish to debate the bill for the first time? Senator Adams, you're recognized to debate for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like the good senator from District 8, I probably owe the sponsor of the bill a little better debate as well. I know there was a lot of effort put into this, and this hasn't come up overnight. But I just wanted to talk about a few things. So last year, some of the members in this body weren't here for this, but last year we went to a flat tax in our state. And we lauded that as being, as going to a flat tax was rejecting a progressive tax bracket. But the way this legislation is set up, and even though it is nicer for, it's incentivized for low income, it is still a pretty progressive approach. when we're trying to talk about school choice, but only for a handful. The other thing I wanted to address was money follows the student, right? I think money should follow the student, but that's not what I think this bill does. I think money just goes straight to the private school. So, again, Mr. President, I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Den Hartog, you are recognized to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Senators, thank you for the fantastic debate. This has been a journey, and I want to address a couple of different things. Something was said on this floor about special interests and how we might be being influenced by that. And for those of you who know my history and the history of many other legislators in this body, this has been a space we've been in for a long time. We've been talking about how to give parents and families and kids options. This is another option. It's not the total package. As I was listening to the debate, I was thinking about the Goldilocks situation. And some of you know how much I love my chair here on the Senate and how I think it is exactly the right chair. So fair warning, please don't take it. I will know. But this is a bit of a Goldilocks situation. Is it too much, too little, too soon, too late? You know, when we were debating this issue on the floor earlier, we heard about, we have no idea how much this is going to cost. This is too much. This is too many kids. How are we ever going to, understand the costs? And I will tell you, I was listening carefully in that debate as we considered what options we might be able to bring forward from this body. Is the $6,000 too much, too little? That again was something else we considered. I appreciate the debate referencing that this is an opt-in, and it is only 2,000 kids. And we are going to be able, in 5 years from now, whoever might be in these seats will have the opportunity to analyze this, to understand, and to frankly make a judgment on whether or not we made the right call. I appreciate the senator from 4 talking about the accountability residing with parents, and I've shared this with many people. As a parent of students who take some standardized tests, I will tell you, I'm not particularly interested in the outcome of those standardized tests as long as I know from their teacher if they're growing, if they're developing, if they're displaying respect, if they're meeting the benchmarks that teacher believes that they need to meet that year with where they started. And I think this is putting that accountability right back in the hands, in the hands of parents. Some have indicated that this is historic. I think most of you are aware of how we operate our Advanced Opportunities Program. I would submit to you that we have public dollars going to private higher ed institutions through that program. This is not new in the state of Idaho. Is it new in the space of K-12? Yes. But we do this in all kinds of other areas where we have public dollars going to private entities. We have food stamp programs. We don't have a specific government grocery store where people can expend those dollars. They can use them anywhere. And I think I think the good senator from 33 brought it up. This is the future. And I would submit to you that the future is now. We don't know where education is going. It is a process. The world is changing. The needs of our families, the needs of our businesses, the needs of our communities are different. And I think something like this helps us explore how the future might look in a reasoned way. Mr. President, debate is closed.
The debate being closed, the question before the Senate is...
President.
Senator Anthony.
Can the Senate go to ease, please?
No go to ease. Senate will be in order. The question before the Senate is, shall Senate Bill 1161 pass? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams? No. Berndt? Aye. Bjerke? Burtonshaw? Carlson? Cook? Den Hartog? Foreman? Grow? Harris? Hartgen? Herndon? Just?
Nay.
Lakey? Lenny? Lent? Okonowitz? Robbie? Ricks? Recti? Schroeder? Semmelroth? Taylor?
Nay.
Taves? Trakel? Van Orden? Warningelking? Winder? Wintro? Seiderveld? Bjerke? Harris? Trakel? He said I.
Yeah, he said.
There are also two pairs. Senator Anthony votes aye. Senator Lee votes nay. Senator Nichols votes aye. Senator Guthrie votes nay.
The vote count, roll call, shows 19 in favor with 15 against and 1 absent. A majority having voted in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1161 is passed the Senate. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, then the title is approved, and Senate Bill 1161 will be transmitted to the House.
Mr. President,
Senator Anthony.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate return to the fifth order of business.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the Senate will return to the fifth order of business, presentation of petitions, resolutions, and memorials. Senate's at the fifth order.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate advance to the sixth order of business.
Without objection, the Senate will advance to the sixth order of business. Reports of standing committees. Senate's at the sixth order.
Mr. President, I move that we recess until the hour 3:30 p.m. today.
Mr. President, second the motion.
You've heard the motion that we recess until 3:30. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We'll see you at 3:30. The Senate will be in order. Prior to going at recess, the Senate was in the sixth order of business. The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams? Anthony? Berndt? Bjerke? Burtonshaw? Carlson? Cook? Den Hartog? Foreman? Grow? Guthrie? Harris? Hart? Hartgen? Herndon? Just? Lakey? Lee? Lenny? Lent? Nichols? Okonowitz? Robbie? Ricks? Recti? Schroeder? Semmelroth? Taylor? Taves? Trakel? Van Orden? Warningelking? Winder? Wintro? Zeiderveld? Guthrie? Winder?
The roll call shows 35 present, a quorum is present, and the Senate is ready to go back to work. The Senate's in the sixth order.
March 16, 2023, the Judiciary and Rules Committee reports that Senate Bills 1175, 1176, 1177, 1178, 1179, and Senate Bill 1180 have been correctly printed. Lakey, Chairman.
Senate Bills 1175, 1176, 1177, 1178, 1179, and 1180 will all be referred to the Finance Committee.
March 16, 2023, the Judiciary and Rules Committee reports that Senate Bills 1131, 1138, 1010, 1092, 1021, 1032, 1033, 1140, 1155, and Senate Bill 1046 have been correctly enrolled. Lakey, Chairman.
Senate Bills 1131, 1138, 1010, 1092, 1021, 1032, 1033, 1140, 1155, and 1046 have all been signed by the Speaker and will be, or Speaker, President, and will be returned to the House for the signature of the Speaker.
March 16, 2023, the Finance Committee reports out House Bill 300 and Senate Bill 1174 and recommend they do pass. Grow, Chairman.
House Bill 300 and Senate Bill 1174 will be referred to the 12th order of business, second reading calendar.
March 16, 2023, the Resources and Environment Committee reports it has had under consideration the gubernatorial appointment of Hugh Cook, appointed to the Parks and Recreation Board, term to expire June 30, 2026. The committee recommends that said appointment be confirmed by the Senate. Burton Shaw, Chairman.
The gubernatorial appointment for Hugh Cook will be referred to the 10th order of business and held for one legislative day.
March 16, 2023, the Commerce and Human Resources Committee reports out House Bill 65, 168, and 235 and recommend they do pass. Cook, Chairman.
House Bill 65, 168, and 235 will all be referred to the 12th order of business, the second reading calendar.
Mr. President.
Senator Anthony.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate now advance to the 8th order of business.
Without objection, the Senate will advance to the 8th order of business. Messages from the Governor. The Senate's at the 8th order.
March 16, 2023, the Honorable Scott Bedke, President of the Senate. Dear Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that John Sigler of Pocatello, Idaho, was appointed to the Board of Environmental Quality for a term commencing March 8, 2023 and expiring July 1, 2023. Dear Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that Leanne Gelski of Boise, Idaho, was appointed to the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired for a term commencing October 13, 2022 and expiring July 1, 2025. Dear Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that Betty Coppersmith of Eagle, Idaho, was reappointed to the Idaho Oil and Gas Conservation Commission for a term commencing July 1, 2020 and expiring July 1, 2024. Dear Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that George Eskridge of Dover, Idaho, was reappointed to the Idaho Energy Resources Authority for a term commencing June 30, 2019 and expiring June 30, 2024. Dear Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that Bud Tracy of Malta, Idaho, was reappointed to the State Building Authority for a term commencing January 1, 2021 and expiring January 1, 2026. These appointments are subject to confirmation by the Senate and notice of appointments is hereby given. Sincerely, Brad Little, Governor of Idaho.
The gubernatorial appointment for John Sigler and Leanne Gillespie will both be referred to the Health and Welfare Committee. The gubernatorial appointment for Betty Coppersmith will be referred to the Resource and Environment Committee, and the gubernatorial appointments for George Eskridge and Bud Tracy will be referred to the State Affairs Committee. And the correspondence will be filed in the office of the Secretary.
There is no further business in the 8th order, Mr. President.
Then the Senate will advance to the 9th order of business, messages from the House. The Senate's at the 9th order.
March 16, 2023. Mr. President, I transmit herewith enrolled House Bills 253, 261, 184, 106, and 93 for the signature of the President. McGinnis, Chief Clerk.
House Bills 253, 261, 184, 106, and 93 have been enrolled and signed by the Speaker, will be signed by the President, and returned to the House.
March 16, 2023. Mr. President, I return herewith Senate Bills 1019, 1020, 1054, 1034, 1035, 1049, 1051, 1005, 1013, 1043, 1113, 1115, 1116, 1123, 1129, 1017, 1027, 1132, 1133, 1134, 1135, 1136, and Senate Bill 1137, which have been signed by the Speaker. McGinnis, Chief Clerk.
Senate Bills 1019, 1020, 1054, 1034, 1035, 1049, 1051, 1005, 1013, 1043, 1113, 1115, 1116, 1123, 1129, 1017, 1027, 1132, 1133, 1134, 1135, 1136, and 1137 will all be referred to the Judiciary and Rules Committee for transmittal to the Governor.
There is no further business in the ninth order, Mr. President.
The Senate will then advance to the 10th order of business, motions and resolutions. The Senate's in the 10th order and will have before it House Concurrent Resolution number 2. The Secretary will read the resolution.
In the House of Representatives, House Concurrent Resolution 2 by State Affairs Committee, a concurrent resolution stating findings of the legislature.
Mr. President,
Senator Zeiderfield.
I ask unanimous consent that further reading of HCR 2 be dispensed with, and the journals show that it has been read at length.
Section by section. Okay, that's right. Oh, it's. Is there a second?
Oh,
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that that the Senate adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 2. Senator Zeiderfeld, you're recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Before you is House Concurrent Resolution 2, and I stand before you today to talk about the importance of the Electoral College and to raise awareness to efforts to repeal or nullify it by the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. The purpose of this concurrent resolution is to set the tone for the state of Idaho and to urge the Governor, Attorney General, and the Secretary of State to join the legislature to opposing efforts to nullify the Electoral College. As many of you already know, the Electoral College is a constitutional system that we have had around for over 200 years. This current voting process is what we've used to elect the President, Vice President. The Electoral College consists of 538 electoral votes that are determined by the number of representatives and senators each state has in the U.S. Congress, plus 3 extra votes for D.C. This system ensures checks and balances to make sure the smaller states' voices are still heard, like Idaho. It also provides a balance between rural and urban interests of states. The Electoral College prevents presidential candidates or an incumbent president from only focusing on the largest constituencies in the country, and it forces them to include the concerns of people in smaller communities. Most importantly, the Electoral College is what keeps states in charge of election laws and administration, limiting the power of Congress, federal agencies, and presidents themselves over presidential elections, hence making it much more difficult for corruption to take place. This type of electoral process keeps the states in charge of the elections like they are supposed to be. It also ensures that minority voices are still heard, thus protecting our country from majority rules. However, a very different voting process that 15 states and Washington, D.C. have adopted is National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I will not say that 5 times fast. This voting process would eliminate our critical checks and balances established by the Constitution and diminish the vital role state role states play in the federal system as sovereign political entities. It would force a state to ignore its own voters and instead give away its electoral votes to candidates deemed to have won the most votes nationally, even if the candidate was rejected by the state's voters. The NPVIC state members also must accept vote totals from other states, even if they are incomplete or inaccurate. This type of voting process is unconstitutional, and it amends the Constitution without going through the appropriate process for making amendments. That one fact alone should stop us from ever becoming part of the NPVIC. This resolution is making an important statement, and that we should continue to uphold the Constitution and protect our country's sovereignty. And with that, Mr. President, the debate is open.
Is there further debate? I would also remind the body of our rule against reading our debate. Hearing no further debate, Senator Zuiderfeld, you're recognized to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just in closing, I just would like to quote Benjamin Franklin when he was talking to Mrs. Powell after the long constitutional convention about that we have a constitutional republic if we can keep it, and protecting our electoral college, I believe, is part of that. And I would love to have your yes vote.
Thank you. The debate is closed. The question before the Senate is, shall House Concurrent Resolution number 2 be adopted? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, the title is approved, and the House Concurrent Resolution number 2 will be returned to the House of Representatives.
Mr. President.
Senator
Anthony. Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that House Concurrent Resolution number 6 hold its place on the legislative calendar for one day.
Without objection, is so ordered. The Senate will have before it now for final consideration House Concurrent Resolution number 3. Right? Yeah. The Secretary will read the resolution.
In the House of Representatives, House Concurrent Resolution 3 by Resources and Conservation Committee, a concurrent resolution stating findings of the legislature and authorizing the Legislative Council to appoint a committee to undertake and complete
President.
Senator Burton Shaw.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading House of HCR 3 be dispensed with and the journal show that it has been read at length.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none. It is so ordered.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 3.
Having been moved and seconded, the debate is open. Senator Burton Shaw, to defend your motion.
Good Senators, this legislation was authorized by the Legislative Council to continue the interim committee to undertake studies of natural resources, particularly as it pertains to the water in the state. I'll read from the bill, and it says the natural resource issues of continued interest include, but are not limited to, the stabilization of a water distribution system and the status of aquifers throughout the state and the wildlife. The purpose of this committee is to study the natural resources we have within the state. It will consist of 5 senators and 5 members of the House of Representatives, and they will make those recommendations to the legislature. It gives this committee the ability to get advice and counsel from outside sources and present those findings to the state. And with that, good Senators, that's House Concurrent Resolution number 3.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Burton Shaw, you're recognized to close the debate.
The debate is closed.
The debate being closed, the question is, shall House Concurrent Resolution 3 be adopted? Since this resolution contemplates the spending of money, the Secretary will call the roll.
Adams. Anthony. Berndt. Bierke. Burton Shaw. Carlson. Cook, Tin Hartog, Foreman, Grow,
Aye.
Guthrie, Harris, Hart, Hartkin, Herndon, Just, Lakey, Lee, Lenny, Lind, Nichols, Okonowitz, Robbie, Ricks, Ruchti, Schroeder, Semmelroth, Taylor,
Aye.
Taves, Trakel, Van Orden, Wardingle King,
Aye.
Winder, Wintrow, Seiderveld, Carlson, Foreman, Herndon, Lenny, Zeiderveld,
The roll call shows 31 in favor with 4 against. The resolution has been approved by the Senate. Is there a correction of the title? Hearing none, the title is approved, and Senate Joint Memorial 101 will be returned to or the House Joint Memorial 101 will be returned to the House. My bad. It's House Concurrent Resolution 3 that we just acted on, not Resolution 1. Anyway, House Concurrent Resolution number 3 has passed the Senate and will be returned to the House. The Senate now has before it for final consideration Senate Joint Memorial 101. The Secretary will read the memorial.
In the Senate, Senate Joint Memorial 101 by State Affairs Committee, a joint memorial to the President of the United States, the Senate and the House of Representatives of the
Mr. President.
Senator Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of SJM 101 be dispensed with, and the journal shall have been read at length.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, then it is so ordered.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of SJM 101.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Senator Guthrie, you're recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senators. I do appreciate the opportunity to present SJM 101 this afternoon. In summary, it's a memorial calling on Congress to address immigration reform, and it is a task they have failed miserably at, and I believe the memorial is pretty straightforward. I'll offer a few opening comments on its merits in my opening debate. On page 1, lines 9 to 15, it sets the baseline of the federal government's responsibilities. It takes up immigration. I think it's fairly significant, so I'd like to read that paragraph. It just says, whereas the federal government of the United States is vested with the responsibility and authority to establish terms of naturalization, to control immigration, and to otherwise establish, regulate, enforce the terms and conditions upon which aliens may enter the United States from foreign places, remain in the United States, what activities aliens may engage in while present in the United States, terms of permanent residency, and the grant of citizenship, in addition to control of the United States border. And I think that kind of sums it up. I'll offer a few other comments just to work quickly through the resolution or through the memorial. Line 16 to 21 talks about the catastrophic failure that the federal government has in terms of dealing with this issue. I don't even think the word catastrophic does it justice. Lines 27 to 34 talks about the consequences of that failure, specific to threats we have due to the unavailability of lawful labor to do tasks that citizens won't do. So let's talk about threats for a minute. Senators, if we don't have the labor force here in the United States, it increases our dependence upon foreign production, which has the potential to threaten our national security. Lines 35 to 39 exposes the threat that we have from drug and human traffickers and the like. On page 2, lines 9 to 15, it talks about internal and external security and processes to help mitigate fraudulent documentation. And in lines 16 to 20, it talks about the need for a guest worker program to meet labor demands. This is not amnesty or a pathway to citizenship. And lines 21 to 27 talks about work authorization, again, without a pathway to citizenship. I think the rest of the memorial is just formatting, and so with that, Mr. President, I will have some additional comments as I close, but for now, debate is open.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Anthony.
To debate the memorial.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, just to kind of set the table, what is a memorial of the legislature? A memorial is a statement. It's a statement. It's sometimes a request, it's sometimes an opinion. It's a statement. It's a statement made to someone else who has the authority or the position to fix a problem. It's not a bill of this body. It can't change a law. It can't grant any relief. It has no authority otherwise to do anything other than make a statement. So now, why are we considering a memorial on the Senate floor today? Because this is a memorial about immigration. And as you know, Idaho doesn't have the authority or the power or the delegation of powers to fix immigration. It's a federal issue. This is a part of the Constitution's delegation of these powers, reserving some for the federal government and granting the rest to the states. Now, I will tell you that I think if Idaho had the power to fix the immigration issue, it'd be fixed by now. That's what I really, truly believe, because I think it requires some common sense. This is a memorial because we're not changing the law today with our votes. It certainly doesn't provide amnesty, as I've heard. It doesn't approve illegal immigration. It doesn't do any of these things that I don't believe in, by the way. So now many of you may have noticed, I don't know, I don't have a problem speaking for myself. I just don't. I always tell my constituents, if they have any questions about what I think about an issue, you come and see me. I'll tell you what I think about things. I certainly don't need my constituents to look at crazy social media posts or email blasts or text messages from out-of-state groups to figure out what I think. I can speak for myself. I can speak for myself very well. Now, with regard to immigration, and speaking for myself, I've even had a lobbyist on my social media posts telling people what I think about immigration. Never spoke to the lobbyist before about it. They have no idea. They don't know. I think to myself, wow, it must be so amazing to have the amount of power and omniscience and brilliance to be able to know what I think inside of my head and speak for me. I'd never presume to do that for somebody else. But this is what happens when we discuss immigration. We lose our minds and we lose rational thought. And so I'm going to try to approach this the way that I can, and I can speak for myself. I think immigration in this country is a mess. I think it's broken. We have allowed people to break the law for far too long. That's what I think about immigration. Our borders are a sieve that allows people to come in, violate the rule of law, and prevent real national security. Illegal immigration burdens our communities, our institutions, and it prevents legal immigration from really being the way that we allow people into the country. I think the current system fails to provide for an adequate legal mechanism for people to enter this country and work. It's a system right now that chooses winners and losers. And that's a breakdown that is certainly manifest in my district in South Central Idaho. I talked to row crop farmers who have a program that's permitted by the federal government for them to bring workers in from out of the country. I talked to my rock quarries in Cassia County. They have a program from the federal government that allows them to bring workers in from out of the country to work, specialized labor that is needed in those rock quarries. But then I look to my dairy industry. There's no program. They have no way to compete. And I know that that's not a good system. The system is broken. And how in the world, I'll tell you, like I said, you take the H2 program. My father was a sugar beet farmer. We utilized the H2 program. Our neighbors down the road couldn't utilize the H2 program because they were dairy farmers. Tell me how that makes sense. The federal government's management of the immigration issue is a mess, and it's broken. So now to be clear, and I don't want to disparage anybody here, I think we've got some good representation in Washington, D.C. from the state of Idaho who understand this issue. And they've been working on it, but they have failed to get the support. And it's not their failure. I think that we've just failed generally in getting support for trying to fix the immigration system that is broken. Let me speak a little bit more for myself. To me, again, this is about common sense. I believe it is high time that the President of the United States and the Congress fix the immigration system. Solutions that I believe in are in this memorial. It's a message that I believe in needs to go to the President and the Congress. That includes securing our border right now. We need to stop the flow of illegal immigration and stop the fraudulent and fake use of Social Security identification cards and the system and the cheating that's taking place. We need to close the border right now. That's the message in this memorial. That's the message you'll read in this memorial if you read it. I believe we need to provide a fair guest worker program for all of Idaho agriculture, not just some. And it's a program that should allow legal workers into the country and prevent illegal workers from coming into the country and from taking Idaho jobs. That's a message in this memorial. That's what this memorial says if you read it. I believe in preventing amnesty. Don't give amnesty. What is amnesty? It's a blanket pardon. It's a blanket forgiveness. It says, we don't care that you came in the back door. We're going to let you stay and there's no consequence. I don't believe in that. I don't want that. I don't believe in amnesty, no matter what you read on Facebook. I want to identify the 11 million plus people that we know of have come into this country and first take the ones who have committed violent crimes in the country and deport them. That's in this memorial. And then let's provide a punishment for anyone else who has come in and violated the rule of law and violated our immigration laws. They should not get blanket citizenship and they should not get blanket amnesty. All that is in this memorial. This is the message that I want to send to the President and the Congress. Senators, the false narratives that we have exist everywhere. One of them is you can't have the rule of law and a system by which you allow legally people to come into this country to work. And I don't believe that. I think it can be fixed. And I want the Congress and I want the President to fix it. I want to stop illegal immigration. I want to provide the right kind of federal program for our farmers, including our dairy farmers, so they can have legal workers in the country. And for this reason, I'm going to support this memorial today on the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Lenny.
will the senator from District 28 yield to a question?
Senator Guthrie, will you yield to a question?
I'll yield.
The senator yields.
Reading from
the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to know from this
You
paper.
just got to tip your hat to me and ask him the question, okay?
Okay. Senator from 28, in this piece of paper you gave us, it says, a California transplant in the Idaho Senate has been quick to say, don't change my state. What is that referring to?
Mayor Guthrie.
Mr. President, Senator from 13, I think is referring to people that come in from another state and try to tell us how to run ours.
Follow up, Mr. President.
Mayor Guthrie, will you yield to another question?
I'll yield.
Senator yields.
This says,
to the chair.
Mr. Chair, Mr. President, thank you. This says a California transplant in the Idaho Senate. I think that seems to be singling out one person in the body. Is that correct?
Senator Guthrie.
Mr. President, Senator from 13, I don't believe it does. I don't see it to read that way.
Okay. Mr. President, to debate the bill.
You have the floor to debate the memorial.
The memorial, excuse me. Okay, so thank you, Mr. President. So I think Senate Joint Memorial 101, it gets the problem exactly right, in my opinion. But it gets the solution wrong. I've heard a saying that it's long on, there's a saying out there, long on diagnosis and short on cure. We get the problem exactly right, but the solution here, I think, is wrong, because the way I read it is that Senate Joint Memorial 101, yes, it's not a bill, yes, it just sends a message, but the message it sends is we want less security and more amnesty. I think that's what it leads to. The fact that there was no public testimony on this is concerning to me. And I think it is contrary to what we've already heard. I think this is about two things. It's about amnesty and security. The first mistake this memorial makes is to insinuate without any basis that the federal government has an obligation to provide foreign replacement wage labor for Idaho industries in Idaho via an amnesty program, where people can come here illegally, or if they're already here illegally, according to SJM101, they simply have to pay an appropriate fee, that's the exact language in the bill, and then boom, they can stay. If that's not amnesty, I'm not sure what is. I think this, if carried to its conclusion, if we take this language, we send this message to DC, they take this and run with it and use this as cover, I think this invites invasion. This displaces American workers, and it deflates wages up and down several industries. Having read this several times, I don't believe this is about guest workers. This is about importing a replacement workforce, which is a massive security breach that only exacerbates the current crisis at the border. Could you imagine when this message gets out that Idaho wants more workers? All you have to do is pay an appropriate fee and you get to stay. Because the problem with these temporary visa programs, as people who have studied this significantly, is that they aren't temporary. Foreign laborers come to the U.S. and stay. 68% of people who are currently here illegally are here because they've overstayed their visas. Think about that. 68% of people currently here illegally are here because they've overstayed their visas. The bottom line is that if we pass this and we kick this up to DC, it does send a message. Senator from 27 is correct. It does send a message. It's not a bill. It's not law. But the message it sends is one that deeply troubles me, because that message says Idaho supports amnesty in a time of crisis. And all this will do is incentivize further waves of migrants at the border, when instead Congress should be focused on reducing the flow of illegal entry of persons and fentanyl. Like I said, it gets the problem right, it gets the solution wrong, because guest worker reform isn't going to fix this. You know, we heard mention of the dairy industry here. They want year-round, low-cost foreign laborers. That's not a guest worker. Like I said, that's called importing a workforce. And I think at the end of the day, it's a failure to enforce the literal sovereign integrity of our nation. This isn't conservative. This isn't good for Idaho. It's not an Idaho solution for an Idaho problem. And with that, I'm strongly against this bill, this memorial, excuse me.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Memorials?
to debate
Senator
against the
Foreman.
memorial.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This memorial is indeed a statement. And when the legislature of the state of Idaho makes a statement, it is the equivalent of the people of Idaho making a statement. And I can tell you without any hesitation that my constituents in District 6 don't want to make this statement. They have made that crystal clear to me, and they've told me why. And I hope to inform you accurately as to why they feel that way. They're afraid that this would encourage illegal immigration, even more illegal immigration. If people who wish to come here, and it's my personal belief that most of the people that come here are darn good folks, and they're coming here to work, and they're in desperate need of money, and we have jobs that we can't fill. And the reasons as to why we can't fill those jobs is a debate for another time and place, I suppose. So these good folks come here looking for work. And if the word gets out that if they come here illegally and simply have to pay a fine, that from that point on they're going to be allowed to work legally, it can't help but encourage a flood of people coming here illegally. Now, I agree the laws in the area of immigration, federal laws, need work. But that's a debate for another place and time as well, I think. The economic factor here isn't lost on me. I understand we have major industry here that's in need of people. But this isn't the way to get workers. We do not want to attract more illegal immigration, and I honestly think that this statement would do just that. Concern and respect for immigration law should trump any economic concerns that may be driving this memorial. And again, I'm not making light of those concerns. They're real-world issues that our industries have to deal with. Our dairy industry, if I remember the briefing correctly, is staffed in terms of workforce with 90% of the people coming from another country. 80% of the people come from Mexico, and the remainder come from other Central American countries. Again, nothing against those good folks for coming here. I admire them for their tenacity in making the trip to come here and their willingness to work when apparently Idahoans, in a lot of cases, aren't willing to take these jobs. But again, respect for the law should come first. The economic concerns should come second. And we should be very careful not to encourage anyone to break federal immigration laws. I agree with the good senators who have stated those laws are in need of some repair. Well, then let's work to repair them. But I don't believe this is the way. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Lee.
Thank you. To debate in favor.
You have the floor.
Senators, I would ask that we look at the plain, clear language of what this memorial does. It does exactly what we're asking. Take a look at the current federal law and let's adjust this. We have current federal law, the H-2 programs, that could be an avenue to look at addressing this need in our state. Maybe there are other avenues. But again, it is not something that we can just put our fist in the air and, as Idaho alone, and say we're going to solve this. We have to call upon our federal partners to take a look at this issue. We have to deal with this issue. And Mr. President, can I quote from the Idaho Republican platform?
Having named the source, The senator may read.
Thank you. Article 4, Agriculture. The Idaho Republican Party believes a strong and viable agriculture industry is one of the most important cornerstones in the foundation of our state, national, and global economy and security. Section 2, we believe Idaho's farmers and ranchers should be able to compete freely and trade fairly in foreign markets. We recognize that the primary function of government and agriculture should be service, research, all of these things. This is fundamental. As we go on and look at, I hope that my good Democrat friends will support this too. There also is a platform, in our platform, national security. The plain language of this memorial supports both of those efforts. A lot has been misconstrued. A lot has been piled onto this. A lot has been done on social media to say that we are for amnesty or we are for violating the law. We are not. We are desperately looking for a solution to preserve agriculture and opportunities in Idaho. That is all we are doing with this memorial, and we are saying, please get to the table and help us find a solution that still preserves national security, still preserves our borders, but allows us to address this critical need in Idaho. And with that, I would urge your support for the plain language of this memorial.
Is there further debate? Senator Hart.
Would the senator from 28 yield to a question?
Senator Guthrie, will you yield to a question?
I will yield.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator from 28, is there anything in this memorial that directs anyone in the executive branch of Idaho's government to do anything?
Senator Guthrie.
Mr. President, Senator from two. I don't believe there is because it's, Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't believe there is because this is a directive aimed at the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Drakel.
Debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you.
To debate the memorial.
Or the memorial, thanks. Thank you to the good senator from 13 for making me think it was a bill. I, too, would like to read from the GOP platform, the national GOP platform. If that's
Having
right.
cited the source, the senator may read from that source.
Thank you. This is from the national GOP political platform, as I stated earlier. America's immigration policy must serve the national interest of the United States, and the interest of American workers must be protected over the claims of foreign nationals seeking the same jobs. With all our fellow citizens, we have watched in anger and disgust the mocking of our immigration laws by a president who made himself superior to the will of the nation. We stand with the victims of this policy, especially the families of murdered innocent. Illegal immigration endangers everyone, exploits the taxpayers, and insults all who aspire to enter America legally. We oppose any form of amnesty for those who, by breaking the law, have disadvantaged those who have obeyed it. So take that in mind when you place your votes.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Burke.
Thank you, Mr. President, to debate the memorial.
You have the floor.
Good senators, misinformation and lies can travel the world 1,000 times before the truth gets out of bed. And this is what we're talking about right now. Misinformation and political spin from outside influence and special interests. That's what I'm hearing. What I'm reading is something completely different, right? I'll tell you what I'm reading right now. And maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see anything about amnesty, all right? Permission to read off the press release from the office of Senator Jim Guthrie and Representative Judy Boyle that we received before debate started.
Having cited the source, you may read from it.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is what it says. Here are the facts about Senate Joint Memorial 101 and what it could mean for Idaho. No amnesty. Senate Joint Memorial 101 does not offer any sort of pardon or forgiveness for the unlawful entry into the United States. Violators will pay a fine to atone for unlawful entry and are barred from future citizenship application. I didn't read anything about amnesty. I think it pretty much said something completely opposite of amnesty, in my opinion. No U.S. citizenship. As SJM101 clearly states, there is no path to United States citizenship in this visa program. Guest worker visas. This is what it states. We can regulate and document who comes into the United States to work and ensure they leave when the visa expires. Guest workers must pass a strict vetting process that includes a criminal background check. On to market demand. We can prevent a future of imported food by allowing food to be processed in America. And last but not least, labor costs. Guest workers would be paid a fair and competitive wage, the same way any American applying for the same job would receive, and pay the same income taxes as a citizen. The current Idaho seasonal field labor rate at $15.68 per hour, right? That's what I'm reading in this memorial. Nothing about amnesty, but what I'm hearing is political spin that I believe is shameful to those good folks who are looking for an opportunity to legally work in this country to help our ag and also our construction industry and our hospitality industry. These are important industries that need our help. And with that, Mr. President, I will be voting in favor of this memorial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator Winder.
Thank you, Mr. President, Senators. You know, we love bringing these kind of memorials and bills that really create controversy so that the people that disagree with us can go beat the crap out of us. They can lie about us. They can publish anything they want about us. We just love doing this. So when we bring something like this isn't because we want it. It's because the people of Idaho, and particularly southern Idaho, have come with a problem. They have a problem. We started out trying to basically discuss it and saying we've got people here that don't have driver's license, that are moving around our state. Yeah, they're here illegally. It doesn't solve the problem. We try to figure out a way to say, okay, that doesn't have the political strength to go through a body like ours because of what people say about it from the outside, people that go into our neighborhoods and plaster our neighbors with lies. No, we love bringing these kind of things. We love getting beat up. We love having people lie about us. So, for all of you that think we're doing this because we're for amnesty, or that we're not for the United States or for the security of our borders, I challenge you to prove that about any one of us. You can say it. It's real easy to say. You can publish it on your Facebook. You can write from special interest groups and attack us. That's not what this body's about.
President, I object. Point of order. He's disparaging members of the body and our motives and intentions in his debate.
Mr. President, I don't believe I mentioned anybody in the body. I've talked about outside sources.
Your objection is overruled. Senator Winter, you can continue.
And I won't take that as a personal confession. Thank you, Mr. President. If you think about what's going on in everything that we bring here, we have a group that rates the bills, gets their press going, gets their media going, attacks us in every way because we just love being attacked. We love getting the you-know-what kicked out of us every day. So when we come here with issues like this, these are heartfelt issues that deserve a proper debate by this body. That's all we're asking. You don't have to support it, but the reason we're here is because people of Idaho brought this to us. People that are saying they have a problem. And maybe you don't have a problem in North Idaho, but there's a problem in South Idaho and in Eastern Idaho, where the agricultural industry is so dependent. They're a huge part of our economy, but it's not just about agriculture. Go around to our hotels, go around to our construction sites, house building, commercial building. Who do you see working? Some would say, well, they're replacing workers. I don't see too many of our people. By our people, I mean the Caucasian people going out and dealing with the issue of manure and milking cows and trying to raise pigs, trying to work in the orchards, trying to work in the fields when it's 110 degrees. You don't see that, do you? It's changed in our country, and yet we need to feed ourselves. We need food security. So I would just ask you to, in the deepest parts of your heart, realize this is about a debate of an issue. This isn't changing laws, and you can go through and nitpick the memorial statement, but just remember, the people that brought it with the sincerity of trying to represent the people in their area, and they really don't appreciate getting the you-know-what kicked out of them or lied about. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Van Orden.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I read from a document that was just given to us from the Farm Bureau?
Having cited, I'm assuming everyone's in possession of it. Having cited the source, the senator may read from that source.
In it, it says, we support strong border security policies that are effectively and diligently enforced. We support reforms to the agriculture guest worker visa H-2A program to be accessible by all production agriculture sectors year-round and seasonal. I believe this too. That's what I believe. My and my husband's farm operation does participate in the agriculture guest worker visa program, the H-2A program. It is not a simple program. There's a lot of documentation that happens when you decide to be a part of this program. There's documentation, there are dollars, there are regulation, there are things that you have to follow when you do this. So it's not a simple program. It's not something that's simple to do. It's a lot of work. And so with that, I would like to say that this is a good program, and it does need to be expanded, and it does need to be looked at again. And I would hope that Congress would do that so that we can address the worker shortages that we have in our state and to be able to help people to be able to make a good living wage here.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Taves.
the resolution
You have the
for
floor.
memorial. Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators. I do recognize that we come from a diverse state with a lot of different interests. I think that's important to note. When I was looking at this memorial, a lot of it I agreed with, and a little bit of it I had a hard time with. I had, just for introducing this memorial, I got blowback from my constituents. So I think it's important to note that all of us can feel pressure from various groups. I honestly don't know of any rating. I have heard different perspectives on this, and I think that it's important for us to hear different viewpoints on something like this. I'm going to just give my position based on the part that I can't support, because there's a lot of it that I can. On line 21, it says, an effective process by which persons currently present in the United States without lawful status. And it goes on to say other qualifications, but the fact that they're currently present in the United States without lawful status makes it impossible for me to support this, even though I see a lot of good intentions throughout the rest of it. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator Burtonshaw.
Having participated in the H-2A program like Senator Van Orden was talking about, you need to understand that the cost involved in that is somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000 per worker that comes in. And if you apply for a worker, then you have to put an ad in the paper that presents that job for anybody in Idaho or anybody in the United States that wants a job in agriculture. They have first dibs. But you know what? You don't get anybody applying for the job. So you bring the H-2A worker in, you provide the housing, you provide a minimum of 40 hours a week at a specified wage. That house has to be inspected, and the water has to be tested. It's a big deal. And so now we have the floodgates open at the border. And we have all these people who are looking for work. What do we do about that? These people have been demonized. There isn't anybody in this room that didn't come from another country, if you follow your genealogy back. And these people are looking for a better life. I get it. I understand it. Now we're asking our congressional delegation to do something about it, to help us, to help this problem, because it's a federal problem that has been forced upon our backs. These are good people. The vast majority of them are honest, good people that are looking for a better life. So, what do we do about it? That's the question. So we turn to our federal partners and ask for help. If my immigration is under federal law, then federal law has to fix it. We need to be really careful in impugning anybody's motives. But you have to understand, in the agriculture world, you can't milk 2,000 cows by yourself. You can't dig 1,000 acres of potatoes by yourself. You can't put up 5,000 acres of hay by yourself. You need help. And the vast majority of people are not raised on a farm, do not understand farm work, and will not tolerate the kind of hours that you have to put in that industry. And so I support this memorial. It's not popular, I get it. It's demonizing us as well as demonizing them, but it's a shot over the bow. Help us. And so I support this, and I appreciate those that have taken time to work with this memorial, and I hope you can too. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator Ward Engelking.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say it's not just my majority colleagues that support this memorial. My colleagues also do. We know this is a serious issue in our country and something that needs to be resolved. We can't do it here. We need help from the federal government, but we know that our farmers, our dairymen, our food producers need workers. We need workers if we're going to continue to have the type of quality life we have here. So I just wanted to put it out there that we care deeply about this too, and we've got to see something done on a federal level.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Zeiderfeld.
Thank you. To debate the memorial.
You have the floor.
This is a really tough situation for me. But first I want to state that it's a slow fade when we give ourselves away. And yes, it's just a memorial, but words do mean something, and there's a purpose for this. It's a piece of the puzzle to get something that we're needing or wanting. I get that. But like the senator from District 4 said, there's a piece in there, that talks about the unlawfulness, them coming here illegally, and we're sending a message to a lot of people who worked really hard to get here legally that they didn't have to do it that way. We're just going to okay it because we're in a situation where we're needing workers. Not only is it a federal problem, it is a state problem. We're in a situation where we've got ourselves in a pickle that we're needing workers for our farms and our dairies. But two wrongs does not make it right. We cannot go and support something that is going to tell the rest of our constituents, which there's 55,000 of them in each one of our districts. We're going to tell the rest of them that we're okay to approve people who are here illegally. And this is stating that they're here illegally. So we're admitting that we know they're here illegal. We're setting a very, I can't even think of the word just because of the difficultness of this for me. But our sacred honor means something, just not as people, but as a state. And when we send this message to Washington, D.C., we're sending it saying that we're in a tough situation and we're fed up with the borders not being taken care of, but because we're in desperation need, we're going to allow more illegal behavior. And that's not part of my sacred honor that I want to put towards this. My word means something. Laws mean something to me. I think there's a solution to our problem, and I think if we all work together, I think we can find something where we're not saying it's okay to come here illegally and then we're going to reward you for it. And I know a lot of people don't say that, and it's not demonizing anybody. I know a lot of them in my area. I know a lot of them that are here illegal and they're fearful. Some of the nicest people ever. I would love to help them as well, to figure out a way to do it that is going to be a blessing to our state and a blessing to our country, and without harming the rest of our constituents, saying that we're rewarding illegal behavior. And for that, I'm going to have to say no.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Mayor Harkin.
Thank you, Mr. President. District 25 and District 24, as the good senator just mentioned, have lots and lots of dairies. And as we learned this morning in Ag, dairies are the #1 business in our state. And we're not saying, come on over here illegally. We're not saying that. This says that nowhere. It doesn't talk about amnesty. It doesn't do most of those things that people are fearful of. It's just saying to the federal government, get off your heinies and get something done. Help us out here. We need to get something done. And my district really supports this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Treacle, for what purpose do you rise?
Debate the bill a second time? Or memorial?
Does anyone wish to debate the memorial for the first time? Senator
Yes,
Harkin.
Mr. President. To debate the memorial for the first time.
You have the floor.
Thank you. First, I just want to say that I know a dairyman and I know his heart. And I realize the challenges that the dairy industry in particular has related to labor. I also know this dairyman's heart to understand that when he talks about people that are not in this state in conformance with federal immigration law, that he really thinks about it from a biblical worldview, and I can appreciate his worldview. And in fact, I talked to him earlier this session, and I talked to him about a proper course being to suggest to the United States government in regards to immigration problems that was a course that should be considered. As to the particular memorial we have before us, I do have a problem with one of the assumptions that are in the memorial, and that it is on page 1. It's not the way I would have written it, because I question the assumption on lines 18 through 20 that part of a existing immigration law is for the purpose of a guest worker program to meet the demands of domestic businesses. I question whether that should be, whether it's part of or was the design for a proper immigration law. But my main purpose for rising is it's hard to address the unavailability of lawful labor in the dairy industry or any industry. We have a demographic problem across a lot of industries in the state of Idaho, including a lot of our trades up where I'm from. It's a demographic problem, and it's got 3 pieces to it that are not addressed in this memorial, and it is that up until last year, it was legal to do so, and we were killing 1,500 Idaho children a year in the womb. We've killed 62 million in the United States of America since Roe v. Wade. That is leading to a serious demographic problem.
I object. Let's stick to the bill, please.
All right, so let's not get incendiary here. Let's stay within the confines of the bill. You can brush by that point, but if you linger there, I will call you out of order.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is exactly on point, because we're talking about the unavailability of lawful labor needed, line 28, page 1 of the memorial. It speaks directly to that we were killing children, and that's not being too graphic. That's exactly what was happening.
Okay, you've made your point.
Fortunately, we're not doing that now, not to that extent. And then I'm going to talk, too, about the orientation of our education system. And that is that, are we raising children in our education system to be oriented toward where we have these kinds of labor problems? That working with your hands in the dairy industry is a noble profession. And are we sending the right message to the children in our education system that that is a noble profession that they should aim toward? And I want to see us do that over time, and I hope we do. We also have a basic problem of we are not reproducing ourselves enough. I'm just talking about 1.71 children per married couple is our reproduction rate in the United States. You need 2.1 to keep up with the labor force, to keep up with reproducing our population. And so I want to leave us with this, and I wish we had addressed it, that lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward, and happy is the man whose quiver is full. And I'm going to say happy is the economy whose quiver is full of productive, goal-oriented laborers. And I'll leave us with that. Thank you.
Who was reciting? Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate against the memorial for the second time.
Does anyone wish to debate the memorial for the first time?
Mr. President.
Senator Adams, for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I'd like to thank the senator from 24 for the casting crowns reference. I did catch it. You know, the border issues that we've had have been going on for a long time. If you don't remember, in 2016, it was a major priority for the Republican presidential candidate. Okay, and that was, now we're looking at 7 years ago. And it didn't start 7 years ago. Ironically, there are employees, they are employees, but there are undocumented workers at our dairies and our farms that have been in this state for over a generation, longer than people in this building, that are serving in this body. And, you know, I thought about the statement that was brought up by the senator from 4 about the portion that he couldn't support. An effective process by which persons currently present in the United States without lawful status and who are gainfully employed and them and their immediate family can obtain work authorization and residency status. And I had a discussion with some of the industry leaders on this, and it kind of struck me Because, you know, the argument of, well, if they're undocumented, you only have two choices, right? Either you give them a chance to continue to work where they are and we keep our industries whole throughout the state. We keep food on tables, keep milk in fridges. Or you can go pick it yourself. But hunger is a heck of a motivator. I'd prefer we not get there. And the state of Idaho is a recipient of decades of federal failure on these immigration issues. Okay, there's nobody in this room whose fault it is. This asks the feds to fix their mess. And I think there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. Maybe this joint memorial was a little too specific in how to skin the cat. But I'm still going to support it because this has to be addressed. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about how we got to fix the border, we got to do all this, and then we have something here that we can send to the President of the United States and Congress and tell them to do something, and we're fighting over a paragraph on how exactly to get it done. Just get it done. It's a priority for the American people. It's a priority for the people of Idaho. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there further debate?
Mr. President, I'll sit down.
Mr. President.
Senator Lakey.
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I would certainly be happy to let a couple senators debate for a second time. I just happened to stand up and appreciate their argument. Senators, I really didn't know how I was going to vote coming in and listening to the debate. And boy, I appreciate the passion on both sides because it is an important issue. When I first left the county, I opened my own law practice, and I speak Spanish, so I thought I'll try my hand at immigration. And man, I lasted about 6 months trying to practice immigration law. The system is horribly broken. It takes years to get through that process. It's not just a simple fix. It needs very dire and definitive actions to fix that process. And our current open border approach is making it worse. But we do need to have an opportunity for good people to come to this country and fill needed positions. We have more jobs in Idaho than we have people to fill them. I represent a rural district now after redistricting, and there's a lot of agriculture in my district, and this is important to them. If we were debating a bill to give a driver's license to somebody that's here illegally, I would be debating against it right now. But that's not what we have. I do support a legitimate, functioning immigration process that helps good people come here to fill needed positions. I come from immigrants. My great-grandfather came to this country to work on the Columbia River Dam system. They went through the process to do that, and they came here legitimately. I will say that subsection 3 is what's given me pause as I've thought about this. The part that gives me a pause is that we're not sending these people back to apply. But that said, that's kind of I guess in my mind, again, coming from a rural district, it's kind of a practical consideration. We're not saying that those people are going to get preference, that they get to somehow be treated differently in the process. We're asking for a process for them to go through. Whether they're here now or they're coming through the border, it should be the same review process for them to be determined whether they can be here legally or not. And if they don't meet that process, they should be deported. It doesn't provide a pathway for citizenship. So, Senators, after listening to the debate, I appreciate all of it, but I think it's important that we give a strong direction to the federal government to fix this system and to deal with it from a practical manner that doesn't provide a pathway to citizenship, but does meet those needs. So I will be voting in favor.
Mr. President, to debate for a second time.
Again, is there anyone that wishes to debate for the first time?
Mr. President.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. President. To debate the memorial.
You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I actually like a lot of the memorial myself. There's a lot of parts that I do really appreciate and feel and agree with and feel that they are things that need to be expressed. But I take a lot of heartburn with one particular portion of it. And I think because we're talking about words and meaning, I wanted to just start with, if I could read from the Webster's or Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a definition.
Having cited the source, the senator may read from that source.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we're talking about amnesty, and if you look up the word amnesty, it means the act of an authority such as a government by which pardon is granted to a large group of individuals. And if we go back to the memorial on page 2, section 3 on line 21, it says an effective process by which persons currently present in the United States without lawful status and who are gainfully employed and their immediate family can obtain work authorization or residency status without a pathway to United States citizenship, provided said persons have no criminal history beyond their immigration-related violations, and provided further that an appropriate fine is assessed and paid in satisfaction of their immigration-related violations. So if we're not dealing with amnesty, then I'm not quite sure why we have this definition of amnesty, because what I currently read really indicates to me that that's exactly what we're dealing with, that it's the government pardoning someone or a large group of individuals. And if we're saying that we want to be able to have the people that are currently here and that we're going to ignore their immigration-related violation and just assess a fine, which is basically pay to play in my mind, then I think we are dealing with amnesty. And I have to say, as someone who has had family members come here to this country within just the past short little while, who have had to get in line and have had to go through that process and do it legally, I feel that's a slap in the face to them. It wasn't a horrible, hard, difficult thing, but they still had to go through the proper process to be able to obtain their citizenship here. And so I feel that that is putting precedence or preference over others if this is the message that we are wanting to send. And if memorials don't mean anything, then why do we do them? Well, we're sending a message. We're sending the way that we are wanting to direct ourselves in the future. And like I said, there's a lot of things that I do like in this. There's a lot of things that are addressed in here that are a concern, but there's a lot of things that are missing too, that I think are also just a high of a concern. And in a country right now where taxpayers are paying for illegal immigrants and their health costs to the tune of $23 billion just in health care, taxpayers are the ones that are going to have to take care of the needs of these individuals currently and in the future. And that is a huge problem because we know that taxpayers right now are having a lot of other problems, both with taxes that we're charging them as a state and with the cost of housing and the cost of food, and the list goes on and on. So now we're going to ask them also to continue, and we're actually encouraging them to fit the bill for others that are here that are not here legally, and to take care of their needs as well. I believe that if the laws on our books that we currently have were followed, we wouldn't have this problem that we're in, both state and federal level. So why don't we turn our attention to that? I'm not saying that we don't want to send a message to our congressional leadership, but what I'm saying is that this portion, this section right here, completely turns me away from the rest of the memorial, because in my mind and in the emails and my constituents that I have talked to, this part of it is a huge problem for them because it actually seems to counter act any of the rest of the memorial in what we're talking about and what we're actually asking Congress to do. So while we do need to deal with this, words have meaning, and we need to make sure that our words are clear and that our intent is exactly what we want it to be. And I think by this section being in there, that it eliminates the good that is in this memorial. And so for that reason, I cannot support this memorial at this time.
Is there further debate for the first time? Senator Carlson.
Mr. President.
You have the floor to debate, Senator.
To debate the bill, or the memorial, excuse me. I am in complete agreement with the senator from, I'm sorry, 16, I believe, what was just debated. And what I want to add to that is that I actually absolutely love this memorial. And then I got to item 3 on page 2, and I realized there was something afoot, and I cannot vote for it because of that paragraph. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Jen Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. President. Similar to the senator from 23, I didn't know what I was going to do when I came in here today. And it has been interesting to listen to the debate. And I just wanted to share something. I agree with what's been said that this is not amnesty. That's not what this memorial says. That's not what it asks Congress and the President to do. I am the direct beneficiary of immigrants. And the senator from 31 mentioned that too. Both sets of my grandparents immigrated to this country shortly before the end of World War II. There was a process, it was functional, but they were fleeing a war-torn country. They had been defending themselves, they had been defending their neighbors. They hid their Jewish neighbors in their home to protect them. They were in fear for their lives and for their families, and their opportunities were taken away. And they looked to this country, and they knew that there was an opportunity here. And the families and the people who want to come here, many, many of them are fleeing destructive situations and places where they cannot live and raise a family and work and contribute to society. If we have a functional immigration system that works, that is timely, that makes sure that the people who want to come here and want to be part of our society, want to be part of our culture, want to be part of this country, we need a way to make it work. And it is not working. It is broken. And so we are left with this mess. And what's been said is absolutely right. We are not the ones who can fix this mess, but we are left with it. And I appreciated the senator from 1 mentioning the biblical worldview. We cannot forget that these are people just like you and I. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'll give it a whirl, Mr. President, to debate. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I promise I'm going to be very brief. 2 suggestions, if I might. Number 1, my ties to the Hispanic community go back half a century, about 51 years. And it's not a cursory affiliation. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll get with you later. But I have a very good grapevine into that community. And the one thing that really stings the Hispanic community is illegal immigration, because we have a tendency to paint everybody with the same brush. It's human nature. It's not right, it's not accurate, but we do it. And they're very sensitive to that, and I understand that. So suggestion number 1 is, if we're going to make a statement, our statement should be, if you want to come to Idaho to work or just to live or for whatever reason, come here legally. If you'll do that, you're more than welcome. But if you want to come here in violation of the law, don't come here, because we respect the law. Suggestion number 2 deals with the economic situation, and it's a serious situation. But what I say to those industries that are having trouble finding workers is, turn to the most energetic, creative, hardworking workforce on the face of this planet, the American workforce, and take the requisite steps and measures to create an environment where it will attract those American workers rather than having to turn to foreign labor. When America puts its heart into working, nobody can beat us, nobody can top us, because indeed we are the world. We have people from all over who came here legally. Let's do what we need to do to make those industries attractive to the Idahoan workers. That will clear up the immigration problem to a large degree, and it will clear up the workforce problem as well.
Mr. President, to debate the memorial a second time. Thank you, Mr. President. So I could be wrong, and I might have missed it, but I have not got one email from an Idaho citizen in support of this, not one. And like I said, we get a lot of emails. I might have missed it. That's very telling to me, that if this idea came from Idaho citizens, I would think that I would have a whole inbox flooded with emails from Idaho citizens, but I have not got one. And like I said, I could be wrong. We get a lot of emails. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think I'm wrong there. So that's very telling to me. And like I said earlier, I love to echo the senator from District 7. I love the first few parts of this memorial. When I was reading it, I said, we need to do this. This is good, this is good, this is good. But then we got to the solution. And again, I don't want to reiterate that point, but that's where I think this fails. Because if we were serious about reforming immigration, I think this memorial would say something about reforming birthright citizenship. It says nothing. It says nothing about people who come here, their spouses, their families, the kids who, when someone comes here and has a child, someone's here illegally and they have a child, guess who gets to pay for that? Guess who gets to feed those families, who gets to clothe them, who pays for their housing, health care, food? We do. Taxpayers do. Idaho taxpayers in this case. And I know I'm not the only one in this body, I think I should know a little bit about that, because I grew up in a state on the West Coast that's overrun with this. It's overrun. Hospitals are overrun. Every service you could think of is overrun. Welfare is overrun. Schools are overrun. Homelessness is on the rise. And the sad part is, it's the people who come here who are suffering from it. So I would ask everybody here to think about this. We always talk about having an Idaho solution to an Idaho problem. This memorial gets the Idaho problem completely correct. But what this memorial is, it's a California solution to an Idaho problem. And as someone who's a California transplant in the Idaho Senate, I think I should know that better than anyone. Thank you.
Mr. President, to debate the bill or memorial a second time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but what I heard us talk about today was the American worker and the laziness of the American spirit. At one point in time, like the good senator from 6 stated, we were a proud nation of hard workers. And what I'm hearing from that is we're no longer that, because now we're dependent upon illegal immigrants to come on and do the hard work, because nobody wants to go and do that. The late George Carlin, comedian, said it best, and to quote him, I can't directly, but the wimpification of the American male. We're our own product of doing that. And what I mean by that is we're enticing illegal immigration. We have businesses, mostly in ag, that hire illegal immigrants, knowing they're illegal immigrants. Telling the federal government they're not, so they can hire these people. Because why? Because we don't want to do the jobs. But look at the side that we're doing. We're exploiting our people. They don't have to be paid the minimum wage. They don't have to be given services. They're afraid to go to the authorities when something bad happens or when they're treated wrongly. I've heard that several times in committees and from people that tell me on different issues that deal with illegal immigration. So it's not necessarily that the American people is lazy. It's the fact that we're creating our own issue because we're cheap. Americans, I understand it. We're hurting financially. We don't want to pay $5 a pound for beef or something like that. That's what would happen when we Americans ourselves start going and working the soil like we should be. But at the same time, it's not right to exploit a culture of people. And I would like to point out, and I don't like usually talking about this stuff outside of my home, we have immigrants that serve in our military. And I have literally fought side by side with these guys. And I've watched them die, and I've watched them bleed, and I've watched them kill for this country. And many of them are much more patriots than those so-called patriots that are born here in our country. The great thing about that is they're not forgotten. There is actually a program that expedites their citizenship should they so choose. It pays for the schooling and courses that they need to go through because they sacrifice for the rights of the American people, and they damn well deserve to be an American person if they so choose. I don't think it is right that I have fought with those that I have fought with and sweated with and buried, to just grant, you don't call it amnesty, but what I read here is to give residency status for people that are here. Call it what you will. Maybe it's my military bias, but coming here and just working a job isn't worthy of just open door residency. Especially when I fought in the trenches in Afghanistan and Iraq with the people that have worked hard for this country. And the fact that I don't want to diminish what they've done, I will be voting against this bill, or memorial. Thank you.
Mr. President, I request a roll call vote as well.
Thank you, Senators, and thank you for the debate. Just a couple of things. And earlier I tried to be respectful when asked a question, but I will tell you, and if people want to sidebar with me later, there is a Facebook post out there that does accuse me of trying to turn Idaho into California and also referring to corrupt Republican senators, so you can certainly ping me on that later. Some concern about page 2 on 3. I want to point out that this is persons currently present in the United States without lawful status. And then it goes on to talking about them obtaining work authorization, that kind of thing. And the part that got people spun up is that an appropriate fine is assessed and paid in satisfaction of their immigration-related violations. Because they paid a fine in relation to their immigration-related violations doesn't mean that's a fine in lieu of we're just going to turn our head and let you be citizens. That's folded into the broader scope of how we do immigration reform in the context of work authorization. So I think there's some misunderstanding on that. He talked about $23 billion in health care. It was brought up. That's a problem today. That's one of the reasons we're bringing this. Talked about being overrun in certain capacities. That's why we're bringing this, because there is a problem. Somebody mentioned that we're admitting they're here illegally. We keep data on it. Right in the memorial, it's 11.4 million people in the United States. Of course we're admitting it. We know that. Another reason why we need to appeal to the federal government to do something. I found that the nexus to abortion was really telling, and that shows you that you can take something and you can manufacture it into whatever your mind will allow. You'll notice on your desk the press release and also a support letter from Farm Bureau, and just close with a little bit of a story. You know, Senators, we all have challenges in life. Personally, I was taught by good parents at a young age not to pout about a problem, but to focus my efforts on trying to find a solution. As a boy, if the baler was breaking bales, I learned not to call my dad. I adjusted the bale hooks or timed the needles or did whatever it took to fix it. If the swather was missing hay, I put in new sections or new guards or whatever it needed. If a bearing was squeaking, I greased it or changed the bearing. If the cows were out, I fixed the fence. When the bigger kid in my class was being a bully, I was told to stand up for myself. And because my parents encouraged that independence yesterday, it has benefited me today as I serve in the Idaho legislature. I am not afraid to discuss difficult issues. In fact, I embrace the opportunity. Yet, it has come at a cost. I've acquired a fan club the likes of which most of us would not like to have, but I have no regrets. So here we have SJM101, which deals with immigration. So you might ask, what does my preamble in my closing debate have to do with this legislation? Well, SJM101, and another piece of legislation I have worked on this year, represents my effort to help solve a problem. Nothing more sinister than that, Senators. My comments are vested in reality of what's going on today. I have found it interesting that I've been beat about the head and shoulders for wanting to have a discussion on an issue that is so long overdue to have. What's more amusing, we know that a memorial has no legal teeth, an effort to make a statement and a request, not one bit of legal standing in any court. And yet, bringing an issue like this to the point of discussion has been viewed to akin of letting a monster out of its cage. What are we so afraid of? But in the spirit of the process, it's okay with me if people are resistive to talk about it. After all, there's a choice we all have to make as we explore options and develop our own cadence as we craft solutions. Everyone is aware that one idea I tried to advance this year did not have enough horsepower to cross the finish line, so now we have a consideration for a memorial that speaks to the broader issue. A memorial simply asking Congress to get off their backsides and deal with the can they have kicked down the road for far too long. But history shows us that it can be convenient to pretend a problem doesn't exist, to bask in the artificial glow of choosing to be oblivious. I'm not wired that way, Senators. In the 5th grade, after weeks of being bullied and beat up by the much bigger classmate, I finally stood up for myself and pushed back one day. And after shoving the head of my adversary in a cold February snowbank, he never bothered me again. Senators, we have a real problem with immigration policy in this country, and it is affecting Idaho in profound ways. If we don't stand up and push back, we are going to continue to suffer from the problematic federal inaction that only makes the problem worse with each passing year. Is the wording in SJM 101 perfect? Heavens no, but show me the memorial that presents itself as an option and we'll talk. But I'm telling you, be careful as you draft it, because a word here or there may stand out as creating amnesty or giving citizenship or voting rights or some other boogeyman that is clearly not in the memorial. I'm reminded of an age-old brain teaser. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Senators, if we continue to put our head in the sand, ignore reality, or choose to see some ulterior motive, does that mean the problem doesn't exist? I suggest we place a call to action by the federal government to address our immigration problems, border security, a charge and responsibility that is clearly in their lane. The choice is yours. I would appreciate your support on SJM 101. Debate is closed.
The debate being closed and a roll call vote being requested, the secretary will call the roll.
Adams.
Aye.
Anthem. Burnt. Bierke. Burtenshaw.
Aye.
Carlson. Cook. Den Hartog. Borman. Grow.
Aye.
Guthrie. Harris. Hart.
Mr. President, 60 seconds to explain my vote.
Sarah Hart, you have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. The memorial uses the word failed or failure 6 times. I think the policy and the immigration situation at the border is failed. I've been there twice. I've seen it with my own eyes. The sponsor from District 28 assured us that this memorial is directed to the federal government, not to Idaho's executive branch of Idaho's government, and for that reason, I'm going to vote yes on the memorial.
Hart votes yes.
Hartgen. Herndon.
Nay.
Just.
Aye.
Blakey. Lee. Lenny. Lent.
Aye.
Nichols. Okonowitz. Robbie. Ricks.
Aye.
Ruckty. Schroeder. Semmelroth. Taylor.
Aye.
Taves. Trakel. Van Orden. Wardingle-King. Winder. Wintrow. Zeiderveld.
Senator Herndon, you voted. Senator Herndon voted no. Just one more good reason why we should use our microphones when we vote. Roll call shows 25 in favor with 10 against, the majority having voted in the affirmative. Senate Joint Memorial 101 is passed the Senate. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none. That's rich, isn't it? All right, so I was saying that Senate Joint Memorial 101 had passed the Senate, and there was no correction to title, and we're going to transmit it to the House. The Senate now will have before it now for immediate consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution number 103. The Secretary will read the resolution.
In the Senate Concurrent Resolution 103 by State Affairs Committee, a concurrent resolution stating legislative findings.
Mr. President.
Sarah Hartgen.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that further reading of SCR 103 be dispensed with. The journals show that it has been read the 3rd time. Excuse me.
Mr. President, can we go to ease?
Let's go to ease.
Oh, what did I do wrong? I thought I was following. Mr. President.
Senator Hartgun, we were in the 10th order of business, and you've been recognized to present your resolution. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of SCR 103 be dispensed with, and the journal show that it has been read at length.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of SCR 103.
Mr. President, second the motion.
Having been moved and seconded, Senator Hartgun, you're recognized to open the debate on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. This Senate concurrent resolution is to say that both the Senate, House, and House Agricultural Affairs Committee agree upon and have approved the fee rules for the Department of Ag, the Idaho Sheep and Goat and Health Board, and the Division of Occupational and Professional Licenses. Please give this SCR your vote of confidence. Thank you. Debate is open.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Hartgun, you're recognized to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Debate is closed.
Debate being closed, the question is, shall Senate Concurrent Resolution 103 pass the Senate? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The report has been adopted, and the paperwork will be filed in the office of the Secretary.
Mr. President.
Senator Anthem.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate advance the 15th order of business.
Without objection, the Senate will advance the 15th order of business. Miscellaneous business, the Senate's in the 15th order.
Mr. President, for Senate privilege.
You have the floor for a privilege.
Just briefly, Senators, here in a moment, we're going to adjourn to a little earlier time tomorrow. We will not plan on an afternoon session, of course, because the Judiciary and Rules Committee will be in for several hours. So again, I just want to remind you of kind of what we're doing, but it'll be a little bit earlier tomorrow morning.
Are there other announcements or introductions?
Mr. President.
Senator Harris.
Mr. President, for an announcement.
You have the floor.
Mr. President, majority members, we will not caucus tomorrow because of the extremely long student rules meeting.
Mr. President, for an announcement.
Senator Lakey, you have the floor.
I think leadership's covered it slightly already, but the Judiciary and Rules Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We plan on having a couple hours of testimony, and then we'll be concluding with a decision on House Bill 71.
Mr. President.
Senator Adams.
It's for a brief announcement or recognition, I guess. Currently, the Boise State Broncos men's basketball team is playing. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it for you. They're playing in their 9th NCAA tournament appearance. Go Broncos.
Mr. President.
Senator Anthem.
I move the Senate adjourn until the hour of 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, March the 17th.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
You've heard the motion that we adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We'll see you tomorrow.